Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how I make maps. My maps all start out hand-drawn, but I'm not going to be covering the line art itself, just how you take the line art, scan it, uh, pretty it up in Photoshop and get it ready for, printing out or production or inclusion in InDesign or whatever it is you're going to be doing with it. So let's get started.
All right, here we have our scanned in line art, which as you can clearly see is fairly crisp, fairly complete, and it's really important to come in with the cleanest line art you can imagine. It's not entirely clean because there are a few things that I wanted to show you how to deal with if you miss anything. But generally speaking, the better your line art is at the beginning, the better you'll do. This is an example of a map that is further along. This is what we're going to do today, effectively. We're going to layer on different colors and pretty it up and make it more presentable. This map isn't done either, but it's closer to our finished point. The key to these maps is the layers, right? Each layer has its own information on it. And I've found that this is one of the most effective and efficient ways to work with mapping in Photoshop. As far as the line art itself, I don't use a mapping program, I just sketch it out by hand. I'm not going to go over that in this video, but you're going for an interesting looking coastline. I mean, there's no real secret to it. You just want it to, look nice. So the first thing we're going to do is isolate the line art itself. As you can see, there's a lot of defects left by the scanner. The paper wasn't exactly down, just a little darker up at the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to crop it so we can just ignore a lot of the problems that it has. So we're going to start up here and just crop down to here. We're going to make a line art layer. Next step is we are going to isolate the line art itself. So let's we're going to select all of the white color, right? Okay, and we are just going to delete it. And this leaves us with our line art on top of transparency, which is what we want. Next step, we're going to make a new layer, and this is going to be the first part of every step, basically, is creating a new layer. We're going to make the ocean layer. Alright, and that's real simple. We just need to go to our line art layer and use the magic wand to select everything that is not the land. And, it's important here to make sure that your lines connect to the edges so that there's no bleed over, in your selection thing. So we've got that selected. We go back to our ocean thing. We pick a nice oceany color. Let's go with that. Not too dark a blue, but a nice dark blue. Go to our paint bucket and click. And there we have it. And you can see there's a few little imperfections that have shown up. Things that weren't quite covered by our earlier steps. So we'll just take our paintbrush and manually, go over them. You can do this touch up now or you can do it later, but for the purposes of our video, I'll just do it as we go along. And as you can see, it's not precise, but it's good enough generally. You can touch it all up later, but for now, if you're doing this for publication and you want to make sure every little last pixel is the right color, you can do that. But I just go for the really noticeable stuff at this stage. And that happens because there are pencil marks on the page still, or little bits of lint, or whatever it takes that the scanner didn't copy the unmarked pages as, pure white, which is really what we're dealing with here. Next step, we're going to do the lakes. And the lakes are done in a very similar manner. Just go back to your line art level, select your magic wand, click, like that. And the other, go to our paintbrush or paint bucket, go to our ocean, grab the same color, and we'll make it a little lighter because these are inland lakes. And there we go. We have our lakes. Rivers are going to be a little trickier because they are just lines, and normally I would make them, you know, channels that when we filled this in, they would just flow up as well. But for this map, I wanted to show you the way to do it if you draw your rivers as lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our line art, and we are going to select all of our dark color again. We're going to go back up to ocean because we only want to draw in the selected area, which here is the lake. And we still have to be careful because we also have some other features that are line art and we don't want to make them blue as well, although we can fix that later, so it's not as big of a deal. So grab our lake color and just sort of draw that in. And because it's a paintbrush, the blue won't be entirely uniform, depending on, you know, how many times you go over it, but that's fine. We're not going to worry about that. Our main concern is not coloring in any other features. It's kind of cool to have a varied blue for the rivers, you know, it doesn't look bad, it looks, you know, it looks okay. Zoom in as you need to. Alright, so there we have our waterways, which are good. The next thing we're going to do is add our land. We pick a nice color for the ground. Just some relatively neutral color, you know, as best we can. And we just use that as the bottom layer. There you go. There's dirt. And we'll probably change it and we can tweak it easily enough because really all we have to do is, you know, layer everything on top of it. Easily just change the color by using the paint can on it, whatever. It doesn't really matter. This is just so that we have something that looks nicer than just plain white. And tweak it as much as we want. Alright, so we go in. The next thing we're going to handle, and what we do is when we're looking in layers is we figure out which color needs to go on top of which, like which is in danger of bleeding out onto what. So the order of the layers sort of matters as well. Next we're going to do our mountains. Now the mountains are already drawn as you can see. We just need a different color for them. Grab a slightly darker shade for the mountains. And we're just going to basically paint them here. Now we're using our we've put our layer below the ocean, so we don't have to worry about bleeding out into the ocean, and we don't have to worry about preserving our coastline. We don't need to worry about our forests too much either because we're going to put those on top of our mountains. So don't worry if it bleeds out there. The only layer we need to worry about is the ground layer. And it's okay if there's a little bleed over between the mountains and the area around it because it doesn't... The drawn peaks don't represent the actual mountains at the scale we're doing. It's just here be mountains. And so it's the rougher terrain, you know, and we can include our hills, foothills in that if we want to, but we don't have to. For these mountains we'll do that though because it's a little bit of a area. It makes the area a bit, gives it more of a distinctness, I think, if we do. But we won't do that, say, with the mountains over here in the east. They'll just be the color they are. Okay, so there we have our mountains. The next step is to create a forest layer so we can make our new layer. Move it down to just above mountains. And we're basically going to do what we did with the lakes and just use our magic wand tool to select sections and fill them with a nice verdant green. You'll have to do a little more tweaking because of the irregular shape. It'll leave more strange gaps, but we can worry about that later. The bigger problem that we face is if we leave gaps in our drawings, this will cause our green to spill out, and we don't want that, so we'll have to fix that as we go. So we select this area. We can see that when we fill it in, it spills out to this whole area here, which means that we have a gap in our line art somewhere in this area. So we need to find that and fill it. And here it is. So we'll just drop a little dot of green there. We'll do it on our line art layer because that's where it matters. Drop our selection again. Looks like we got everything we need. Yep, looks good. So and there we have our forest layer done. Alright, last part we have is this little swamp area here. And we're going to put that, it's going to be under our ocean, under our water level, so the only feature that matters is the rivers here. So we're just going to pick a nice sort of darker swampy color. We're going to create a new layer and just sort of draw that in. There we have our colored in terrain map. We're not done yet. There's still, touch-ups and the entire political geography and, labels and towns and borders and everything else we want to do. Everything else we want to do to make it look nice. But we'll save that for another video. I hope this has been interesting or helpful to you, and if you want to check out other videos of this sort and everything else that I do, just go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And I hope you have a great day.